They are pressing stones onto his chest, one after another, each one heavier than the last. The crowd is silent now. Someone asks him to speak, to say a single word that could save his life. His lungs can barely pull in air. His voice is thin but steady. He says, "More weight." Moments later, Giles Corey is dead. This is Salem, Massachusetts, and this is where the story ends. But it's not where it begins. To understand how a quiet town reached a moment this cruel, you have to step back into daily life in Salem. It was a small Puritan community where faith ruled everything. People believed God watched their every move. They also believed the devil was real, active, and always nearby. Life was harsh. Winters were brutal. Food could run out. Disease spread fast. Children died young. When something went wrong, no one thought it was random. They believed it meant something. Think of fear like a storm cloud that never leaves the sky. It doesn't rain all the time, but everyone feels it overhead. Then two young girls, Betty Paris and Abigail Williams, began to change. They screamed without warning. Their bodies twisted. They collapsed. They said they saw things no one else could see. Dark shapes, invisible hands. Doctors tried to help, but they had no answers. And when science fails, fear fills the gap. The town landed on one explanation: witchcraft. Once that word was spoken, it was like dropping a match into dry grass. People didn't ask if it made sense. They asked who was responsible. The girls were questioned again and again. Who did this to you? Finally, they named names. Tituba, an enslaved woman far from home. Sarah Good, poor and homeless. Sarah Osborne, older and disliked. These were people already judged by the town, already whispered about, already seen as strange. Fear rarely points upward. It looks for the easiest target. Tituba was pressured until she broke. She confessed. But instead of ending the panic, her confession fed it. She said there were others, many others. She said witches were everywhere in Salem, hiding in plain sight. That idea spread faster than truth ever could. Accusations exploded. Neighbors turned on neighbors. Friends turned on friends. Children accused adults. People were arrested based on dreams, feelings, and visions. Someone would say, "I saw their spirit hurt me, and that was enough." They called this spectral evidence. Think of it like blaming someone for a shadow you think you saw. No proof, just fear wearing confidence. The trials became a trap. If you confessed, you might live. If you said you were innocent, you could die. Imagine being stuck in a game where telling the truth is the most dangerous move. People began to lie just to survive. Some accused others to save themselves. Justice disappeared. Fear took its place. Then came Giles Corey, an old farmer, a husband, a man who understood what the court was doing. When he was accused, he refused to speak, not because he was guilty, but because he knew the rules. If he entered a plea, the court could take his land and leave his family with nothing. His silence was his last form of control. So the court punished him. They laid him on the ground. They stacked stones on his chest. Slowly, painfully, each breath harder than the last. They begged him to speak. He never did. He asked for more weight. By the time Salem began to question itself, the damage was already deep. Accusations had reached respected church members. Even judges' families were no longer safe. Doubt finally crept in. The governor stepped in. The trials were stopped, but stopping didn't undo what had happened. 20 people were executed. Hundreds were accused. Families were torn apart. Trust was destroyed. No witches were ever found. People later searched for explanations. Some blamed mass panic, spreading like a sickness. Others pointed to strict religion, old grudges, or fear of change. Some even believed the food people ate caused hallucinations, like a bad dream shared by a whole town. But none of those answers fully explain it. This wasn't really about witches. It was about fear being louder than reason, about authority going unchallenged, about how quickly people turn on each other when they believe they are right. Salem didn't have social media. It didn't have breaking news or viral outrage. It had rumors, it had certainty, and it had people convinced they were doing the right thing. That's what makes this story uncomfortable, because the people of Salem weren't monsters. They were parents, neighbors, friends, ordinary people who let fear guide their choices. The Salem Witch Trials ended when the executions stopped, but the lesson didn't end there. It whispers a warning across time. When fear replaces facts, when feelings become truth, and when questioning stops, history shows us how easily justice can collapse. Salem reminds us that the real danger isn't witches hiding in the dark. It's what happens when we stop looking at each other as human beings.